Welcome back to On the Same Page. We are on Daf Chaf Vav Amud Aleph, 26a of Meseches Kiddushin. We are starting from 7 lines from the bottom of the page, 2 dots. The Gemara quotes the Mishnah. The Mishnah had said that Nechasim she'ein lahem achrayus, property that doesn't bear with it responsibility, meaning there's no lien created. It's the way that we refer sometimes to metaltal and movable objects. So the Mishnah had said that even though movable objects cannot be acquired through, let's say, Mishnah had said that land can be acquired through kesef, money, shtar, a document, or a chazaka, an act that demonstrates ownership. But metaltal and movable objects can't be acquired with those three. Metaltal, the Mishnah had said, movable objects, nechasim she'ein lahem achrayus, can be acquired specifically through meshicha, through pulling it. Now there may be other ways to do it also, harbah, lifting up, but that's what the Mishnah said. The Mishnah mentioned meshicha, pulling it towards you, but the transaction cannot take effect. It doesn't come into your possession through handing over money, or through handing over a document, or through doing something with it that would show ownership, unless that action is actually pulling it towards you. That's what brings it into one's possession. However, the Mishnah said that you could acquire metaltal and movable objects agav, on the side, sort of attached to land. So if you acquire land with one of those three types of acquisitions, money, document, or chazaka, act of ownership, so you can also acquire movable objects with that action, with that transaction. Even though normally that type of transaction doesn't work, like money doesn't work to acquire metaltal and movable objects, but if you are anyways buying land, then and you hand over the money and you acquire the land that way, but along with it you could acquire metaltal as well. So the Gemara asks, Mina Hanini, from where do we know that such a concept exists? How do we know that when I acquire land, I can acquire metaltal and movable objects agav the land, alongside the land, in the same transaction? So Amar Chizkiya said to Amar Kra, because the pasuk says, this is a pasuk in Divrei Hayamim, it's referring to the king Yehoshaphat, and it says there, Vayiten lahem aviyah matanos, and their father Yehoshaphat gave his children gifts. What did he give them? So our Gemara doesn't quote it, just have the Gomer. The pasuk continues, it says, he gave them many gifts, silver, gold, other things. And then it says, Im arei mitzuros b'Yehuda, along with protected cities, along with cities. So the Gemara is telling us that he gave it with the cities, that he really gave them the cities, and they acquired the cities, and alongside acquiring the cities, they were able to acquire the gifts as well. So from here we have this concept that along with an acquisition of land, through a kinyan, through a type of acquisition that affects a transaction on land, that can also acquire agavit. Alongside it, it can acquire the metaltal and the movable objects as well. In this case, it was gold and silver and other things. Now, the Gemara asks, they asked, Ba'inon Siburim Olo. Do we need it to be piled up or not? Meaning, do the movable objects need to be on that land at that moment or not? Or can a person acquire a piece of land and along with it acquire movable objects that are somewhere else? Or can you only acquire the metaltal in those objects if they are sitting on the land? So Amar Rav Yosef says, Tashma, come and listen. Rabbi Akiva says, he quotes a brisa, Rabbi Akiva says, Karka kolshu. If you have a piece of land that's even a kolshu is the most minuscule amount. So you own like a speck of land. So it still can have halachic ramifications. Says Rabbi Akiva, chayeves b'peya. You would be obligated in leaving a corner of that land. So I guess something has to be growing there, so it has to be minimally large enough to grow something. But if it does, you have to leave the corner for the poor. Uva bikurim, it would be also chayev obligated in bringing the first fruits to the Beis HaMikdash. If it grew fruit, then wherever those first fruit are, you have to bring them to the Beis HaMikdash. V'lichtov alei pruzbul. And just owning a tiny speck of land is enough to allow one to write a pruzbul. So a pruzbul is the enactment that Hillel made, that the elder Hillel made to allow for loans to continue through the Shemitah year, or past the Shemitah year. So the halacha is, according to the way most Rishonim understand, is that at the end of every Shemitah year, so every 7 years, at the end of the 7-year Shemitah cycle, any outstanding loans are automatically forgiven, automatically nullified. So we're in a Shemitah year now, so at the end of this year, if anybody has a loan out, so between two Jews, that loan would be nullified, unless they, this was the takana, this was the enactment of Hillel, that it's sort of a workaround to allow it to continue, which is to write a pruzbul. A pruzbul is a document that sort of hands over the rights of the loan to the beis, into the court, and that allows it to continue through Shemitah. And but in order to write a pruzbul, a person has to own some land. So and that gets into how, the technicalities of pruzbul. That's how he established it. You have to own land to do this. But the Mishnah is telling us, the Brisa, Rabbi Akiva, is telling us that how much land you have to own? Just a tiny bit. Even a kolshu, the smallest amount, is enough to allow one to write a pruzbul. Okay, now here's the line that's important to us. The last thing he says is, V'liknos ima nechasim she'en lamachrayus. That it's also good enough just to have a tiny bit of land. Even if you have just a speck of land, that's enough to be able to acquire even nechasim she'en lamachrayus. Property that has no obligation attached, has no responsibility, what we are referring to as metaltalin, movable objects. So this is back to the case that we learned in the Mishnah. The Mishnah says that although you can't acquire metaltalin through kesef, through money, or through shtar, a document, that cannot affect the transaction, that does not transfer ownership, the giving of the money, but when it comes to a field it does, when it comes to land it does. By just giving the money over, the land becomes the buyer's, and the Mishnah said that you can do it agav, that once you're acquiring land in that way, metaltal movable objects can become the buyers as well in the same transaction. So, and our question was, do those movable objects have to be on the land or not? So here we're saying that even if you own a very tiny piece of land, you're able to acquire movable objects agav alongside the acquisition, or as long as you're acquiring a tiny bit of land, you could acquire metaltalin, movable objects, along with that piece of land. So says the Gemara, Ve'i amart ba'inan tziburim, and if you say that you need to have tziburim, you need to have it piled on the land, then the metaltalin has to actually be on the land for that to work. Kol shehu l'may chazi. What is a minuscule amount of land going to help? A kolshu literally means like the tiniest piece. So the Mishnah is supposed to be teaching me that I could acquire metaltalin along with even the tiniest speck of land. Well, if those metaltalin have to be sitting on that land, there is no land. It's a tiny speck. So it must be that they don't have to be on the land. That's what it seems we can prove from here. So the Gemara says, no proof. Tirguma Rav Shmuel bar Bisna kamed Rav Yosef. Rav Shmuel bar Bisna explained it in front of Rav Yosef. This was Rav Yosef's response, so he said back to him, no. Kigon shena'at b'machat. We could be talking about you stuck a needle in. Yes, it's the tiny speck of land. You can acquire some metaltal and some movable objects along with that land. What kind of object can you have on the most minuscule section of land? The answer is a needle stuck into that little speck of land. So Rav Yosef was not happy with this answer. Amar le Rav Yosef, Kavastan, you are paining me, he said. Ichbal Tana la'ashmu'inan machat. Do you think the Tana of this Brisa, Rabbi Akiva, went out of his way so much just to teach me that you could acquire a needle? It just seems ridiculous. He's trying to tell me what the possible use is, where there is a practical application owning or selling or anything to do with the tiny piece of land. So he gives different examples, and one of them is that you can acquire metaltalin with it. You think he threw that example in just to bring out that you could acquire a needle? It just seems ridiculous. So Rav Ashi said, no, it's not so crazy. Who says that such a needle can't have a beautiful jewel on it that's worth 1,000 zuz? So, you can come up with a case where it's significant. Yes, for a little needle it seems insignificant to teach me that halacha. Nobody would imagine such a thing, but we could make it a very significant needle. It could be a needle that has a beautiful jewel on the end of it. And then it becomes very, it's a very important halacha and very significant, very impactful. So, therefore, there's no proof from this brisa with regards to our question. Our question was, do the metaltalin have to be on that land in order to acquire them agav, along with the land? And we thought to prove that that no, because it talks about here about acquiring metaltalin even on a speck of land, and that they wouldn't be on that speck of land. So you see, you could acquire them even if they're not on that land. We said no, maybe it's talking about acquiring a needle, and maybe the needle has a beautiful jewel, so it could be very, of significance. Okay, so we have to try another proof. The Gemara continues and says, Tashma, come and listen. Another brisa, I guess. Amar Rabbi Lazar said, Maise b'madoni echad. There was a certain Madoni, it was a place, he came from Madon, he was Jewish. Shahaya b'Yerushalayim, he was in Yerushalayim. Shahayu lo metaltalin harbe, and he had a lot of metaltalin, a lot of movable objects. Ubikesh vitnam b'matara, he wanted to give them as a gift to somebody, but I guess that person wasn't there to accept the gift and to do a kinyan meshicha. So he had to figure out a way to transfer ownership of these items to this person he wanted to give the gift to. So he asked the rabbis, and Amrulo, they said to him, Ein lo takana ad sheyiknam al gabe karka. The only solution here is to acquire them agav karka, al gabe karka, along with land. So I guess somehow he would be able to transfer the ownership of land to the person he wanted to give the gift to, and maybe the guy would be able to make a chazaka on the land. I'm not sure how exactly he was going to get the land to the person, but that's what they said. You have to do it agav karka. You have to transfer land to him, and when he acquires land, he can also acquire the movable objects, the metaltalin, that he wanted to gift. So the problem was, though, that this guy from Madon, he didn't have any land. So he doesn't have any land to give to the guy, so that the guy could acquire the land and along with it acquire the movable objects. So Ma'al says, so what did he do if he didn't have any land? Halach, he went v'lakach beis sela samuch Yerushalayim. He went and bought a beis sela. Now it's not clear what this beis sela is, but he bought a beis sela. It's a piece of land, and it was near Yerushalayim. Ve'amar, and he said, Tzfoni zeh leploni. He said, this northern spot of this land will belong to so-and-so. Ve'imo, and along with it, I'm going to transfer to him meya tzon umeya chavios. He's going to acquire also 100 sheep and 100 barrels. And that was how he was going to get this, he acquired this little piece of land, this beis sela, and along with it, he would transfer over the 100 sheep and the 100 barrels. Umeis, and then he died. Vikimu es tivarav, and the rabbis upheld his word. So Now the question here is, what is this piece of land, this Beis Sela? So the Gemara asks, the Gemara makes that point, says, if you're going to tell me that in order to acquire the metaltalin, the movable objects along with the land, it has to be on the land, Beis Sela, what's it going to fit on a Beis Sela? Meaning he's trying to transfer 100 sheep and 100 barrels. Well, the Beis Sela can't hold that. Why not? What is a Beis Sela? So Rashi says the Gemara at this point thinks, Rashi has two suggestions what the Gemara thinks. The Gemara either thinks that a Beis Sela means, a sela is a type of coin. It means an area as large as a coin. So it's a tiny piece of land. So he bought a tiny piece of land and he's going to transfer the metaltalin, the 100 sheep and the 100 barrels, along with that piece of land. Well, if it's only the size of a coin, obviously that stuff doesn't fit on the land. Another possibility is that it means a rock, but the point is that it's a rock. It's not, you can't put this stuff on top of a rock. It's not going to stay. So those are two possibilities for what the Gemara thinks right now. But it clearly thinks that it's impossible that these sheep and these barrels are on this Beis Sela, either because it's the size of a coin, or it's a weirdly shaped rock that you can't put the stuff on. Or not large enough, either way. So the Gemara is saying, you see again, it must be that the metaltalin doesn't have to be on the land, that you can transfer the land, and agav, along with it, you can transfer the metaltalin from wherever it is. So the Gemara responds, no, it's not a proof. It says, Mai Sela. What do we mean? Sorry, it says mi savras Beis Sela sela mamish. Do you think that when it says the Beis Sela, the area of a sela, it means a sela, a coin, or a rock, a small rock? That's not what it means. My Sela, what does it mean a Beis Sela? Denafish too, it's really a big area of land. Ve'amai karle Sela, so why is it called a Beis Sela? Dekashi Sela, was hard like a rock, meaning he bought a piece of land. Obviously, he's trying to buy land on the cheap because he's just doing it to be able to transfer, right? So he bought a rocky piece of land, an area that nobody would plant on, but it's a large area, it's just useless, and that's why he was able to get it for cheap. That's what he bought, but it's really very large, and it could be that he actually was able to bring all the sheep and the barrels to that spot, and so there's no proof as to whether the stuff has to actually be in that spot or not. It could be it doesn't, or it could be it does, and it was a large rocky piece of land that he brought the stuff to, and that's how he transferred it. So far our question still remains, does the metaltalin have to be on the land or not in order to be transferred along with the land? So Tashma, so come and listen to another brisa, or another statement of the sages. To Amar Rabbi Yehuda Amar Rav. Rabbi Yehuda said in the name of Rav, Maise be'adam echad. There was a story with a person. Now, this person, we're not sure if he was sick or if he was healthy. Either it says, Shechala b'Yerushalayim ki Rabbi Eliezer. According to Rabbi Eliezer, we could even say that he was sick. Meaning he was on his deathbed and he wanted to transfer his things. Now, Rabbi Eliezer holds that even somebody on their deathbed cannot just transfer their objects. There's something called a shchiv meira. It's a person who's about to die. According to the Rabbanan hold that a shchiv meira, someone who's about to die, is able to transfer property without the recipient having to make a kinging, having to make an acquisition. So that's the Rabbanan's opinion. Rabbi Eliezer doesn't hold like that. Rabbi Eliezer holds that even on his deathbed, he cannot transfer something to someone else without that person making a kinyan. So this was a person. It could be he was dying. But according to Rabbi Eliezer, that's not going to help him. He can't just transfer his things without a kinyan, without a proper acquisition. So he wants to be able to transfer things. Ve'amri la bari, or it could be that he was healthy, but we would be going like the Rabbanan. The Rabbanan hold if he wasn't healthy, if he was dying, he could transfer his things. But if he's healthy, then he can't transfer his things. But the bottom line is we're dealing with someone who wants to transfer property, movable property, but he can't. Shahayu lo metaltalin harba. He had a lot of metaltalin, a lot of property, a lot of movable objects. Ubike shlitna b'matana, and he wanted to give them as a gift, either because he was dying, or because he just wanted to. He was healthy, but he wanted to. So So the rabbi said to him, Ein lo takana ad sheyiknam al gabe karka. You have no solution to transfer them unless you do it along with karka, along with land. So ma'asa. So what did he do? He didn't have any land. Same like this previous story. He didn't have any land. So halach v'lakach beis rova samach Yerushalayim. He went and bought a beis rova, a small quarter of a kav, certain size near Yerushalayim. Ve'amar, and he said, tefach al tefach leploni. I'm giving this one hand's breadth by a hand's breadth to so and so. Ve'imo me'atzoma me'achavios, and along with it 100 sheep and 100 barrels. So here we know exactly the size of the land that he's giving. He's giving the land that's the size, it's a tefach by a tefach. It's like this big. Not very big. Obviously you can't fit 100 sheep and 100 barrels on a piece of land this big. So, umes, and then he died. V'kaimu chacham misdvarim, and the rabbis, the sages, upheld his instruction. It seems that worked. He was able to give this piece of land, and along with it, he was able to transfer the metaltalin, the 100 sheep and 100 barrels, and clearly they were not on the piece of land. And if you tell me that they need to be on the land, they need to be piled up there, tefach al tefach l'may chazi, what exactly can you fit onto a tefach by a tefach, a hand's breadth by a hand's breadth? Clearly, they do not have to be on the land. Says the Gemara, no. You don't have a proof? Hacha b'may askinan, here, what are we dealing with? L'dami, we're talking about cash. He didn't have the 100 sheep and the 100 barrels. He wanted to give money to the guy that would be worth 100 sheep and 100 barrels. And that could fit, even on a little spot. You pile it up. A few big bills, rubber banded together. Right? Obviously in those days they weren't dealing with bills, but you just, you stack them up, you put a pouch full of gold or whatever. It could fit there. And says the Gemara, Hachanami mistavra. And this is logical that he's dealing with money. Because if he was not dealing with money and he actually had 100 sheep and 100 barrels that he wanted to transfer, so fine, the guy's not there, to do mashicha. Maybe he can't pull them towards him. But nikninu nihali b'chalipin. Let him use a kinyan of chalipin, of exchange, where he could pick something up and that belonged to the other person, and the exchange can happen in that way. So I believe that he has to lift up something belonging to the other person. So it has to be that he's able to get his hands on an object belonging to the other person. Maybe somebody else could give him something on the other guy's behalf, perhaps, and he can pick that up. Maybe that would work. I'm not such an expert on how kinyanim acquisitions work, but the Gemara is saying that if we were dealing with actual movable objects, then he has the option of the kinyan of chalipin, where you lift something up and exchange it for those objects. But a kinyan chalipin doesn't work on money. You can't do kinyan chalipin on money. You can't acquire money or transfer money with chalipin. I can't pick up a handkerchief and now my money becomes yours. It doesn't work. So that's why the Gemara says, therefore it makes sense that we're talking about money. Because he's looking for all these solutions. He needs a solution to get the money to the guy. And so why doesn't he just do chalipin? Well, because it's money, right? So and chalipin doesn't work with money. So the Gemara says it makes sense that we're talking about money. If we were talking about actual objects, he should just be able to do a kinyan chalipin. So the Gemara says, Ve'ela mai l'dami. So you're saying he's talking about money. So nikninu nihale b'mashicha. Oh, actually, this clarifies it. Let him just do mashicha then. If we're talking about money or even metaltalin, but you're saying we're talking about money, then let him do mashicha. Let the guy acquire the money by pulling it towards him. Ela deleise lemekabel matana. That must be that he's not here. That's the whole problem. The problem is he's not here. So then Chalipin won't help either. Because for Chalipin you also need the guy to be here. You need him to give his handkerchief. So the Gemara was trying to say, this guy's trying to transfer his sheep and his barrels. The Gemara he goes to the rabbis, how can I get my sheep and my barrels to my friend? They say, well, the only way to do it is if you transfer karka, land to him, then he can acquire the sheep and the barrels along with it. So the guy goes and he transfers one tefach by one tefach of land to the guy, and the sheep and the barrels with it. The Gemara says, you see that you don't need to have the sheep and the barrels on that piece of land. Then the Gemara says, maybe not. Maybe he didn't have sheep and barrels. Maybe it was just money, and maybe the money was on the land. And he says, I'll prove to you that he was just dealing with money, because if he was dealing with sheep and barrels, he could have done a king in Chalipin. The guy could have given him his handkerchief, and he could have transferred it over to him. But you can't do that with money. And that's why he needs a different solution. So it must be we're talking about money. The Gemara says, well, if you're suggesting that you could do a king in Chalipin, that means you think the guy's here. And if he's here, you could just do a Mashicha. Just pull the money towards him. Why do you need all this fancy stuff with the land? Just pull it towards him. Rather, he's not here. So he can't pull it towards him. He can't do a king in Mashicha. He can't do Chalipin. He can't do this trade because he's not here to give something in exchange. And that's why we're looking for a solution. So what is the solution? The solution is that it's a piece of land, tefach am tefach, which is enough, but I guess we're still saying that there's still money. And the money will fit there. So the Gemara asks still though, v'nizkinu nihale agav acher. There's another way to do it. So he's not here. Okay. But somebody else could do the acquisition for him. A person is allowed to acquire on behalf of another. So if the guy he wants to give the gift to isn't here, but he can have the guy's friend, or his friend, someone else, a third party, come and pull it towards him and make the acquisition. Why doesn't he just do that? So the Gemara says, Lo samcha daite. No, because he doesn't want to rely on the friend, doesn't trust him. Doesn't trust a third party. The guy might walk off with all the stuff. Savar shamet v'achol. He's concerned he'll grab it and eat it himself, consume it himself. But the Gemara seems to be admitting that that's technically a solution. It's technically a solution to give it to a third party to acquire it on behalf of the guy he wants to give it to. So the Gemara asks, so why did the rabbi say there's no solution except for land? There is a solution. You give it to a third party. You just don't trust a third party. So the Gemara says, Hachi kamar. This is what he was saying. Since you don't trust a third party, you have no solution except for to transfer it by way of land. If you would trust a third party, that third party can make the acquisition on behalf of the person you want to give it to. But since you don't trust a third party, your only solution is to give it along with land. Still though, we still have not yet answered our question. Our question still remains, when you transfer metaltalin, movable objects, along with land, do those objects have to be on the land itself or not? We thought to prove it because here he's transferring barrels and sheep on a piece that's only a tefach by a tefach. It must be they don't have to be on the land. Gemara said, no, maybe it's money. Maybe it's not. We're not dealing with the actual sheep and barrels. Maybe it's money and it does fit on the land. Maybe it's not. We don't know. So we still don't have a proof, and we'll have to continue dealing and figuring out this question when we continue next time.